everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Real Steel, where we talk all things Pittsburgh Steelers. No BS, just The Real Steel. I'm your host, Jeff. I'm joined by my co-host, Polt. Happy New Year, Polt. We got a couple games to break down, a game to look forward to round out the regular season. And, fortunately, the good news here is the Steelers are headed to the postseason, but we might not be going in as hot as we wanted to. So, Happy New Year. And where do you want to start with all this?
Yeah, Happy New Year. We didn't do the episode in between the Ravens and Chiefs game, and honestly, we're lucky that it happened so close that we didn't have to talk about
Yeah.
both games in great detail. So, yeah, I guess we just got to break down this tough 3 games in 11 day stretch that we had. Obviously, we talked about the Eagles game, but now the Ravens and Chiefs game, which were both pretty darn ugly. So, yeah, we got some things I guess to talk through and work through.
Yeah, I say we just dive right into it. 2 losses
Yeah.
in these 2 games. 34-17 against the Ravens, 29-10 against the Chiefs. I wouldn't say that this is unexpected. I think both of us knew that these games were going to be challenges. I would say what's unexpected to me is kind of the scores and really how we lost both of these games. I would have expected the Steelers to play a little bit closer football, particularly against the Ravens and honestly even against the Chiefs at home. The Ravens, we had a couple guys missing, but the Chiefs, we brought George Pickens back. We brought Dante Jackson back.
Deshaun Elliott came back against the Chiefs. Yep.
Deshaun Elliott, yeah. So, I think we can start off here with the Ravens game, and maybe just go through a little bit of what stands out. And the one thing I'll bring up pretty quickly here is, the score into the third quarter of this game was 17-17. There was a moment where, it felt like the Steelers were in a position where we could have definitely won this game. I think a lot of things just haven't really been going our ways. We've been forcing turnovers, but not being able to recover fumbles, like getting the ball on the ground and not being able to pick it up. Defense, generally speaking, Swiss cheese, I would say, from our secondary. We're getting picked apart there. And so I feel like there's ways that kind of these really good teams are capitalizing, and it's a little bit worrisome as we head into the last game of the year and into the postseason.
Yeah, I think the first thing you mentioned is really my big takeaway from this 3-game stretch. In all 3 games, including if we include the Eagles game in this, we were in the game at the end of the third. The Eagles game, it was 20-13 after 3. The Ravens game, it was 24-17. And the Chiefs game, it was 16-10. We were in all 3 of those games, and in all 3 of them, we failed to score in the fourth quarter. We ended up losing 27-13 to the Eagles, outscored 7-0, outscored 14-0 or 10-0 in the fourth quarter against the Ravens, and outscored 14-0 in it was 13-0, sorry, in the Chiefs game. But we were in these games, and we just decided to not just not to play well in the fourth quarter. And that's, I think, the disappointing part of this. We were in all of the games. If we want to talk the Ravens game, we couldn't move the ball in the second half. The same thing as the Eagles game, right? We only had like 2 possessions in the entire Eagles second half. In the Chiefs game, we had a terrible turnover that killed us. And that's what you mentioned, the turnover battle. We did get one in the Ravens game, an interception off of Lamar Jackson, but we lost the turnover battle 2-1. And the Chiefs game, we lost the turnover battle 2-0. And early in the year when we were having success, we were winning the turnover battle and getting more takeaways on defense. And you're right, we just can't be in the right place at the right time right now on defense, and it's really starting to hurt us.
And even generally with, all good points, but even generally just with the turnovers that we are forcing, we're not able to capitalize off of them,
right?
Which is detrimental to a team's success. If we go back to this Ravens game here and we look at it where it's 17-17, Steelers let up a touchdown. They go down 24-17. We put together a shorter drive, turn the ball over, but then we get that interception that you mentioned off of Lamar, again, down a touchdown, but 2 plays later, Russ throws a pick six, and all of a sudden it's 31-17. And so now you're a couple minutes into the fourth quarter and all of a sudden you're down 14 instead of being down 7 and having a drive to be able to go tie things up. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of different things that are coming into play here, and tying up loose ends is certainly a big one here. And I don't know what has changed so much about the Steelers these last few weeks. I mean, we can make the excuse of short stretch of time to play, to play so many games, or we
Yeah.
can kind of say, well, it's the toughest part of our schedule too in terms of the best opponents. You're playing the Philadelphia Eagles, you're playing the Baltimore Ravens, you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and now we're going to have to turn around and play the Bengals, who have won, I think, 4 in a row. So definitely a really tough part of the schedule. But this is, again, I've said it already, it's not the way we want to be going into the postseason. We don't want to be crawling into there.
No.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we ultimately address it and move forward. The thing that plays in our favor is, we do have a little bit more of a break in terms of, prepping for the Bengals game, right? I think we'll have 10 days.
Yeah.
So that will play in our favor. And the Steelers generally play pretty well coming off rest. And we're getting some guys back like Joey Porter Jr. and Ben Skoranek and maybe even Justin Fields. So I don't know. I think I'm a little bit flustered, kind of taken aback, and don't really have a lot of words to kind of talk through this. I think there was a lot of frustration watching these games, and
Yeah.
it's kind of where I sit.
Yeah. I mean, we can blame the schedule makers all we want, and yeah, for everybody involved, all 4 teams involved, it was pretty ridiculous that we had to do 3 games in 11 days. That's pretty crazy, especially down the stretch in December. That's just hard to do for any NFL team. But for us to sit here and complain about that's why we lost is pretty bad, considering two of the teams we lost to also had to do the exact same thing. They were also
Right.
part of this holiday rewind or whatever the heck the NFL called it. And so I think we just ran into a couple better teams right now. And I'm not saying that we can't beat any of these teams right now. I mean, after these last 3 weeks, it kind of seems like we can't beat these 3 teams. But if we play any better, I think we could. And you mentioned the Ravens game. The pick six was the defining moment in the game. Against the Chiefs, we went down 22-10 to start the fourth quarter, and then we had a drive where we had a sack that put us in 3rd and 15, and then we got 10 yards, but Pat Freiermuth fumbled, and that gave them a short field, and they ended up scoring, I think, 4 plays later, and it was 29-10, and that's all she wrote. I mean, that's the end of the game right there. And so it was 2 big turnovers that we just are playing sloppy football, it seems like, all over the field, whether it's the offense turning the ball over, Russell Wilson getting sacked a bunch of times, the offensive line not blocking, the secondary, like you said earlier, being Swiss cheese and just looking horrible and not ready. The defense in general just having bad communication. There's a lot of things that are really shining right now in a negative way. And I think that's really been mentioned in the locker room and in the media, and especially with this team. It sounds like Tomlin tried to address it, and they're going to try to fix it. But I don't know. I just don't know if it's too little too late, or if this is good that it's happening now in December and that we can actually make adjustments and fix ourselves going into the playoffs. Because we are, at the end of the day, like you said earlier, we are in the playoffs. I mean, we were guaranteed the playoffs coming into this stretch, and that's probably the saving grace of all of this.
Yeah. So how do you feel about Russell Wilson? Because I think that these last couple of games that he's played have probably been his worst of the season for us.
Yeah.
And his stats don't necessarily tell that fully. I mean, looking at kind of the box score here from the Ravens game, 22 of 33 for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception against the Ravens. And then if I look at it for the Chiefs game, definitely not as much production in that sense. 23 of 37 for 205 yards, no touchdowns and an interception, but sacked 5 times against the Chiefs, sacked 3 times against the Ravens. So
Yeah.
is this, you mentioned offensive line, is this poor offensive line play? Is this finally facing some defensive fronts that are a little bit better than what we faced? Or how much is this to blame on Russell Wilson? Because I feel like his pocket presence as of late has not been too strong.
I mean, I think a lot of it's to blame on Russell Wilson. I personally, since we have 2 games to talk about here, if I had to give a jag off for this stretch, to me it's Russell Wilson.
Me too.
I mean, I really think Russell Wilson, in my opinion, is the reason we lost the Ravens game. His pick six, obviously, you mentioned, was a huge game changer and completely flipped the game on its head. And then he also had a fumble too, which I think set up another one of their touchdowns. So, I mean, he's just looked lost. Pocket presence, as you mentioned, has been horrible. He just doesn't seem to know when anybody's rushing around him. He has no idea. And then he just, I don't know. He just doesn't get the ball out. I don't really know how to describe it. Like Kenny Pickett would always bail out of the pocket too early. Russ just seems to not know what to do ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he just sits there and then lets guys get around him, and then he has balls batted away, or he can't escape because he's not quick, so he doesn't step up in the pocket. I don't really know what it is, but I do put a lot of blame on Russell Wilson. But if you go to the offensive line like you're talking about, Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick have been really good. In Week 17 against the Colts, McCormick had 0 pressures, or McCormick
Colts.
had 1. Or did I say the Colts?
Yeah.
Sorry, I meant the Chiefs. Zach Frazier had 0 pressures allowed, and McCormick had 1 pressure allowed. So those two guys are playing really well, but it's the guys on the outside that are having the problem. Dan Moore has flipped back to being the Dan Moore of old. Since Week 10, he's allowed 8 sacks, which is the most in the NFL. But on the other side, Broderick Jones has actually been better. Broderick Jones was obviously not very good in weeks 1 through 8, but weeks 10 through 17, he's actually been, per PFF, a better offensive tackle than Dan Moore. So we can't get everybody to work together is kind of, I think, the problem. And Russell Wilson just has reverted back to his preseason days that we were worried about coming into the season and why we wanted Justin Fields to start. He just doesn't look comfortable, and the sacks have been a huge part of this run.
Yeah, I watch teams like the Detroit Lions, and I watch teams
Yep.
like even the Minnesota Vikings, and gosh, even like the Rams. Just different teams that I watch, and the play calling that they have, and the designs that they're coming up with, and the schemes is so much more creative than a 1st and 10 handoff
Yep.
or a 2nd and 8 toss play. And that's a point of frustration that I think has built up and kind of really, really hit home these last couple games too, because I feel like we know we have some of the pieces there.
Yeah.
And you mentioned if you were to give a jag off for these 2 games or this stretch, it would go to Russell Wilson, and I'd fully agree. If I were to give a balls of steel for these 2 games, I'd give it to Jalen Warren.
That's hilarious because I had the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Warren as of late has emerged as an awesome back. He's running so hard. He's doing really well in the passing game. He's
Yeah.
hitting holes in the in the middle as well as kind of getting outside. And the fact that we're still doing things to kind of avoid getting the ball in his hands is silly to me. I just feel like the Steelers are a little bit too simplistic here with some of the play design. And when we know things like our deep balls can work, why aren't we seeing more of them? Why aren't we seeing a little bit more of this, West Coast offense, right? So that's another piece I think has kind of settled in for me these last couple games, and I think that's definitely played a role in how things have panned out. So, yeah, I mean, to me, there's a lot of things, but that's one.
Yeah, I mean, just talk about Jalen Warren against the Ravens. He was 12 carries for 48 yards and 5 catches for 44 yards, so almost 100 yards all purpose. Against the Chiefs, he had 11 carries for 71 yards and 5 catches for 40 yards. So he is all over the place, but our running game has been actually good in these last 2 weeks. We had 117 yards against the Ravens, and we had 202 yards against the Chiefs, who, I mean, I know they were without Chris Jones, but I think are a pretty good run defense. So the run game's gotten going, but now the pass game has fallen apart. And it seems like earlier in the year, the run game was good and the pass game sucked. We just can't tie them all together. And I think we were blaming George Pickens being out for the Eagles game, for the Ravens game. We got him back for the Chiefs game, and it didn't look any better.
Didn't make a difference.
I don't think it made a difference at all. He only had 3 targets, I think, in the entire second half of that Chiefs game, which makes no sense when you're down by a bunch of points or multiple scores and you're trying to come back. I don't get it. The play calling has been weird. You remember last year when all we wanted was not to run jet sweeps? Do we run any of them this year? I don't think we do. And to be honest with you, those can help set up other plays. Just that motion is really important. And that was one of the things we complained about with Matt Canada was motions. And I feel like we do motions in this offense, but nothing of substance. It's just like a guy moving from wide to in a little bit, like just a small little movement, which is fine, but it's not really helping us tie plays together. And yeah, we're way too predictable, way too predictable. And these good defenses, as we've just seen the last 3 weeks, are able to pick it apart and really know what's going on before the play even starts. But I mean, it's disappointing. Yeah, I thought with George Pickens back we would be better, but that just wasn't the case. He only had 3 catches for 50 yards. He did have the 41-yard catch, but other than that, he was pretty much a non-factor.
Yeah, I mean, again, we have certain pieces that can be utilized and that should be utilized, right? I mean, Pat Freiermuth was our leading receiver against the Chiefs.
Yeah,
We've seen the damage that Pat's been able to do in the middle of the field and getting into the end zone. Pickens, as you mentioned, came back for the Chiefs game, and we didn't really utilize him that much. But Calvin Austin has been super successful this year. And then we have, guys like Darnell Washington. Why are we not using Darnell Washington, in the red zone or running, fade routes to him or who knows?
yeah,
And then there's the Mike Williams story, right? I think he had 3 catches against the Ravens, but
he did.
a goose egg in the Chiefs game. And so that's still quite puzzling where that guy should be your clear wide receiver too, and there's not much production coming there. So I don't fully know what that story is. One thing I did want to bring up too, though, is just going back to what we were saying about Russell Wilson and the pick six that he threw. And I go back to the Browns game where he threw that pick six, where granted, I think Pickens kind of got pushed to the ground and that was a little bit of bullshit.
Yeah,
But Mike Tomlin said in his press conference that he was asked, is that kind of a route that Pickens, ran short or gave up on or something? And he said, not at all. He said that was not George Pickens' fault at all. That was 100% Russell Wilson's fault. So I think there's a little bit of something that's going on with Russ. And I think, like you said, if you would have to give the reason that we lost the Ravens game to someone, it was Russ. I would fully agree with that. I
yeah.
truly believe that he's playing a large part right now in the team's success and not success. And whether that means that we should move to Justin Fields or not, I don't think is a discussion necessarily. I
No,
don't feel like that's the thing to do, but Russell Wilson has got to step it up for sure.
I mean to your point though, like is it just all the defenses? I mean, we went through that early stretch of the year and we talked about we didn't play any real good D. I mean, the Broncos were a good D and we scored 13 points, but Russ didn't play. And
Mm-hmm.
since Russ came in, what did he start the Jets game or the Raiders game first? I
Started
think
the
the
Jets game.
Okay, so the Jets game, I mean, the Jets defense, we know they've collapsed this year, not very good. The Giants aren't very good. The Commanders are very beatable. The Ravens, the first time, we only scored 18 points and kicked 6 field goals, right? So we weren't that great. The Browns game, I know it was a snow globe, but we only scored 19 points. The Bengals are a terrible defense. The Browns, okay, we put up 27, but we had a lot of interceptions in that game that helped us get good
Mm-hmm.
field position. Then we play the Eagles, Ravens, and Chiefs, and the Ravens at the beginning of the year weren't that good. Their defense is coming along right now. Their defense has been really good like, in December, and I mean even into November. So yeah, I think it's the fact that Russ hasn't played good defenses, and now he is starting to play them, and he's starting to struggle. And I think if anybody's anywhere near him, he just kind of freaks out and doesn't know what to do. And that seems to be the problem because even in the Chiefs game, he fumbled in that game too, but we
Yeah.
somehow recovered it. It's just he seems lost, and this is kind of what we saw in the preseason. I mean, if you remember back then, he was just taking all these sacks and not really know what to do, and we were just saying, "Oh, it's preseason. He's rusty. He was hurt." I mean, that's kind of what it looks like right now too. He's been better than he was then, but I don't know where this team can go with the offense we've had the last couple of weeks.
So what do you think the solution is? I mean, is there one?
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure.
I honestly don't know. Russ has to be better. I think that's the solution, and I
Do
don't
you
know if
think
that's
Justin
possible.
Fields being healthy plays a role in this in terms of introducing Fields into certain packages and
I
I
think
don't
it
know,
could
taking some
help.
pressure off Russ or who
No,
knows?
I think it could help because yeah, if he's struggling, they could give Fields a series, and run the ball a little bit more, and maybe that opens up the offense a little bit, just the threat of Justin Fields. But they haven't really used him all that much when he's been healthy and Russ
Yeah.
has been the starter. So, but maybe that is something they've looked at over this mini buy and have said we need to be more dynamic, and Justin Fields is the guy that we need to be able to do that. So I don't know. I think Justin Fields can't hurt the offense. The running game's been good, and that's what he's best at. So why not utilize him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
they need to take some pressure off of Russell Wilson for sure.
I think we've been successful when Justin Fields comes in,
Yeah, we have.
just based on what I've seen. But I want to pose a question to you. I think it's way too early to kind of be thinking of this, but
Yeah.
it's got to be on the back of your mind because it is on mine. What the heck are we going to do at quarterback next year? Is it worth signing Russ? Is it worth signing Justin Fields? Do we have any clarity there? Do you think we're going to go for? I've seen things that say we're going to take a stab at another free agent who's out there. Um, I don't really have any inclination. I don't even know if I have a preference, to be honest with you.
I don't have any opinion. I mean, it all kind of seems meh. I mean, it seems like we're in quarterback purgatory as we've been for the last however many years since, Big Ben's last couple of years. The issue is Russ is showing his true colors now, in my opinion. So I don't know how you can necessarily go back unless he figures it out. And then Justin Fields, I don't know. I feel like Justin Fields never got a good opportunity. They had the training wheels on, and we never got to see what he was really able to do. But again, we could be wrong on that. My issue with going to free agency is there's no free agency quarterbacks. What are we going to do? Sign Kirk Cousins? I don't want Kirk Cousins. Sign Daniel
Mhm.
Jones? That's just as bad as we've been. Sign Sam Darnold? I don't even think he's going to be on the market. So,
Right.
I mean, sign Aaron Rodgers? We're back to square one. I mean, I just think they're stuck in a really bad trend. So, to be honest with you, I'm kind of leaning that we try to sign back both of the quarterbacks we have now, and maybe prioritize Fields over
Hmm.
Wilson, but sign them both back, run it back one more year, see if we can get any better, and then try to get a high pick in the 2026 draft and take a quarterback because that draft class is a little bit stronger than this year's. This year has like two guys. That class might have four or five, so maybe we can get somebody for the future. That's really I think we're stuck in this for another year.
Yeah, interesting. I like. I guess I had said I don't really have an opinion. Maybe I do have a slight opinion. If I had to choose, I would say Justin Fields would be more intriguing for me in terms
Yeah.
of someone that we might keep. And you're right. I don't think he necessarily got a fair chance. So
No.
that would be worth, I believe, still exploring. But again, these are questions that I'm sure we have time and
We do.
yeah, I don't know. So
I
yeah,
think it is worth mentioning with the Fields thing, just because we'll wrap that up. He's only played in 38.2% of the offensive snaps, so we will keep our fourth round pick and send a sixth rounder for him at the end of the year. So, I mean, that's kind of a big deal, not getting rid of a mid round pick, getting rid of a late pick instead.
yeah. So I think we can maybe what we have to do here is put these games behind us, um, and look forward to our last game of the season because there are a lot of implications for what happens with this Bengals game. Um,
I think we have to talk about the elephant in the room that's been out, after that Chiefs game. I mean, there was a lot of pretty negative comments coming from some of the biggest leaders of the football team. Cam
okay.
Hayward, Deshaun Elliott, Patrick Queen. I don't have all of their quotes here, but they were all making some pretty big comments about how guys aren't prepared, guys aren't working hard.
It's the same shit we hear year after year.
Well, Cam Hayward said 10 guys can do their job, but if one doesn't, then you're screwed, basically, is what he said. And all signs look to it's one guy. And it's one unit. I mean, if we say a unit as a whole, this was my second possible jag off of the two games was the secondary. The secondary has been horrible, absolutely horrible, getting shredded. Mahomes has gone off on us. He threw for 320 yards. It was like the best games Mahomes has played all year.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be a good defense, and really what it seems to be coming down to from reading through all the people doing the digging is it's Cam Sutton's play. The Cam Sutton has been horrible, and there's some pretty telling stats here, and I don't really understand it. But since the bye week, so since week 10 when he came back, we've surrendered 300 plus total yards in 7 of 8 games. In the last 5 games, we've given up over 375 total yards in all game but one, and the one game was Cleveland. That Cleveland game was the only time in the last 5 games that Beanie Bishop outsnapped Cam
Hmm.
Sutton. So when Beanie Bishop's on the field, we've been better. And Beanie Bishop didn't play a single defensive snap in the Kansas City game with Cam Sutton playing 69% of the snaps. It seems like everybody is saying that Cam Sutton has been the problem. That's that one guy that Cameron Hayward has been talked about after the game is not playing it, not doing his job. And you could see in some of these plays. I mean, if you look at the Travis Kelce touchdown against the Chiefs, he was the guy that was supposed to cover him in the zone, but he just sat there at the 5 yard line staring at Mahomes and was hoping Minka, who had to cover the corner, was going to cover him. And it's made Minka Fitzpatrick look really bad. And I don't think it's been Minka Fitzpatrick. I think he's been covering all these holes that the secondary has brought, and it's been bad. Over the last 2 games, Cam Sutton, 6 catches on 8 targets, 43 yards allowed, 2 touchdowns, 0 pass breakups, of
Hmm.
126.6 passer rating allowed. And then here's the other telling stat. Without Joey Porter Jr., we're stuck. And we're talking about future. This is what we need to focus on. Per PFF, there's 138 corners that have played 100 or more coverage snaps this season. Dante Jackson's ranked 132, and Cam Sutton's ranked 128. That's two of your three main corners just getting torched. And I mean, I think that makes it even harder on Joey Porter Jr. So I think it's just worth mentioning that the secondary has been horrible. The defense needs to get better. The communication's been bad. It looks like they have no idea what they're doing. And hopefully over these next 10 days, the 10 days leading up to the Bengals game, they'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah. It's a good point to bring up the Cam Sutton situation because it shouldn't be overlooked. I mean, I don't know if the Travis Kelce touchdown is the one I'm thinking of, but there's another video where Minka is telling Cam where he needs
Yeah.
to cover. Is that what it is?
No, that was actually on a Travis
Yeah.
Kelce catch when there was three guys on that side of the field, and there
Okay.
was three of them, and Cam Sutton went with the same guy as Minka instead of covering Travis Kelce, and he had like a 20-yard open play.
Exactly. And Minka kind of directed him to cover him,
Right.
and Cam essentially fucked it up. So,
Yeah.
um, I mean, we talked, I think, really, really early in the season how Beanie Bishop was pretty wishy-washy,
Yeah.
and then he had those couple games where he had those back-to-back interceptions and played really, really well. I think he was named Defensive Rookie of the Year or Rookie of the
He
Month
was.
in the month of October, and so all of a sudden Cam Sutton comes back from his suspension and it's a huge regression. So I don't know. That did come up in Mike Tomlin's press conference. He was asked about the Beanie Bishop versus Cam Sutton, and I don't fully recall what his answer was, but I don't think it was really straightforward one way or the other.
Never
Um,
is.
so I don't know if they're going to watch film or watch tape and realize some of the stuff that's going on. Mike Tomlin was also asked about the shit that's been talked about in the locker room and amongst these guys, and so the classic Tomlin answer is, "Oh, I don't really pay attention to that, and stuff resolves itself and whatever." But
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a point of concern, and you have to hope that this period of rest and being able to kind of watch and digest a lot more film will change things and help improve things.
Yeah, hopefully they just let Beanie play. I mean, I think he started playing better because he was starting to get comfortable. He is a rookie, and he was an undrafted rookie, so why not give him a chance? Cam Sutton's on a 1 year deal and he hasn't played well. You're probably not bringing him back, so let Beanie play. We also should mention Corey Trice did play really well in that Chiefs game. So if Joey Porter Jr. can't go, I would much rather see Corey Trice out there than James Pierre or even Dante Jackson, to be honest with you. So we'll see what they do. But yeah, hopefully they'll have this all figured out. We'll see.
Yeah, I think Joey Porter will be back. I think Corey Trice should be back too. He was said that he kind of sustained some in-game
Okay.
injuries, but I think he's back, or I
Okay.
think he'll be fine. For what it's worth, Tomlin said the same thing about Jalen Warren, but probably the classic bumps and bruises. So
Yeah.
hopefully this team is healthy by the time we play the Bengals because again, this is a big game. Do you want to move on and talk about it, or are there any other loose ends you want to tie up?
Yeah, I mean, we can move on. I'm good.
Okay, so I think what's worth noting here is this is a classic schedule maker play here, taking into account Hard Knocks. The AFC North was completely scheduled on Saturday of this weekend. Baltimore and Cleveland play at 4 or 4:30 on Saturday, and then the Steelers and the Bengals play at 8 p.m. on Saturday night. So no Sunday football for us. Again, I don't know. Not that it matters. Maybe I'm being picky here since we did have a couple of extra days of rest, but like, come on, like it's a day earlier than we fully anticipated, and whatever
I actually think it's positive for us because the Ravens have to try because are trying to win the division.
because they're playing
Whether
first.
right, but if we played first, they could bench their guys and rest. And I think it's also helpful because now we can't be on short rest for the playoffs. There's no chance we get a full week guaranteed whether we play Saturday or Sunday. Whereas if we played Sunday and then had to play Saturday in the playoffs, we would be on a day short of rest. So I actually think it's a positive for us getting it not out of the way.
Okay, fair enough. We'll take that. Nonetheless, this game is at home. As
Yeah.
we said, 8 p.m. here on Saturday. Steelers actually underdogs at home, 1.5 underdogs to the Bengals, and I think that's because, quite frankly, the Bengals are on a really really hot streak right now.
Yeah.
They've won their last 4 games in a row. The last game that they lost was the game against the Steelers, 44-38. They beat the Cowboys, they beat the Titans, they beat the Browns, they beat the Broncos, and the Bengals are playing hard because they still have a chance to make the playoffs here.
Yeah.
They need a little bit of help in terms of their scenarios to kind of fully work out. But for the Bengals, it starts with a win against the Steelers. And by the time Saturday rolls around, regardless of what happens with the Ravens and the Browns game, if the Bengals win, they'll be in playoff position. They'll just be rooting for other teams to lose. So they're playing for everything here. They're playing for their season. We, on the other hand, are playing for the division. Again, depending on what happens with Baltimore. If Baltimore loses and we win the division. If Baltimore wins, it doesn't really matter what we do. We'll end up getting the 5 seed or the 6 seed. But there are some implications in terms of who we ultimately could play depending on how some of the other games pan out, right? We
Yeah.
could go to Houston as a 5 seed. We could go to Baltimore as a 6 seed. The only good news here is that we definitely won't be going to Buffalo as a 7 seed. That has fully been rolled out. With the Broncos' loss to the Bengals last week. So nonetheless, again, there are implications for the Steelers to want to go into this game and win, even if the Ravens end up winning their game, because I think I'd rather be the 5 seed here and go to Houston than go to Baltimore as the 6 seed.
I completely agree, and that's where I think that this narrative is incorrect. I think that everybody's saying the Bengals are the only team in this game that have something to play for. I think we have everything to play for. I mean, first of all, you could be playing for the divisions if the Browns somehow upset the Ravens, which I think they beat them earlier in the year. So I mean, it's probably not going to happen, but it's still possible. And if that case situation, you obviously want to play. But even if the Ravens lose, I think you want to win because you don't want to go to Baltimore again. You'd much rather go to Houston, who's struggling probably worse than us. So I think that narrative of the Bengals being the only team interested, which I'm not saying you're saying that, that's what like the national media is saying. I think that's completely wrong. I think we really care. And Mike Tomlin's comment about resting players was it's significant how we enter this tournament. And so he's not planning to rest guys, and he shouldn't. We should try to, if we win, we're the 5 seed at worst. And we go to Houston, and we have a much better chance of winning a playoff game than we do going to Baltimore. And so I think we have everything to play for. If we do end up losing, then if the Chargers win, we become the 6 seed and go to Baltimore. But if the Chargers would lose too, then we are the 5 seed. So, yeah, we'll see. I think we have just as much to play for as everybody else.
So here's how this game stacks up. You probably have some stats on where the Bengals are kind of to round out the season, but Joe Burrow has thrown for 3 touchdowns in his last 8 games, at least 3 touchdowns and over 250 yards in his last 3 games. With a really weak secondary like we've talked about, that's bad news.
Yeah.
He's first in the league in terms of passing yards and touchdowns, second in the league in quarterback rating. So Joe Burrow is having, I would definitely consider it to be an MVP caliber type season.
Yeah.
I think he's very much, because of the not so much success of the Bengals, been overshadowed by guys like Lamar and guys like Josh Allen. But I think Joe Burrow is very deserving of kind of an MVP with the season he's been having. We know who their playmakers are on offense. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins is having a really good year, and Chase Brown has emerged as a really good running
We'll
back.
see if he plays.
So he might be out. Okay.
He got hurt at the end of the Broncos game, so not
That's
sure.
true. That's true. Good point. I didn't fully pick up on that. So we will see if he plays. I'm looking here at the injury report right now, and it looks like he's questionable.
Yeah.
As are a few of their other guys on here. So Bengals, when we played them last, we torched them.
Yeah, we had
from an
400 passing
offensive
yards.
perspective. Their secondary is also not very good, but they have a strong defensive front. And so this is a game where, yeah, I don't know what to expect, but we really need to get our shit together.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, the last time we played, we had 520 total yards to their 375. We scored 44 points to their 38. We threw for 410 to their 282. But this is, I think, a different Bengals team. I mean, I know they were good
Hmm.
offensively back then, but like you said, they are on a tear right now. And it's going to be hard to slow them down, which means our offense is going to have to be ready to go because we're going to have to come ready to play. We're going to have to score a lot of points to be able to beat this team, and they're actually a better team on the road than they are at home. They're 3-5 on the at home and 5-3 on the road. So hopefully we can catch them there. But in points scored, they're sixth in the league, which seems kind of low for them, but they're averaging 28 points per game. They're first, as you mentioned, in passing yards per game, almost 280 a game, and they're 29th in running yards per game. On the flip side, defensively, they're 29th in points allowed, giving up 26. Let's hope we can put up another 40 bomb on them. Their defensive run game, they're 21st against the run and 24th against the pass. So I, I mean, this is a perfect situation for Russ to kind of turn it around in this offense to maybe work through some things, and let's hope they can put up another 500 yards.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the way I look at this is the Bengals are kind of on a polar opposite track
Yeah,
than we are right now. They're averaging almost 30 points a game over their last four games. And we're averaging 10, 17, 13, and 27. So what is that? 40, 50, 67 divided by four. That's not too hot. That's 17 points a game. So they're 13 more points per game in terms of what they're averaging against us. They've won their last four. We've lost our last three. Fortunately, I think this is, you mentioned that the Bengals are playing a little bit better on the road, but a night game at home at Acrisure, I think plays in our favor.
yeah.
As I think a lot of night games for Mike Tomlin do. So, primetime lights, we'll see what the team is able to do. So you have a bold prediction? You have a score prediction? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I was trying to come up with a bold prediction, and I think I just did. Russell Wilson has thrown for over 300 yards once this year, and that was against the Bengals when he threw for 400. I think he throws for 300 plus passing yards again and two touchdowns. And it's not
All
that
right.
bold, but that's my prediction. I think Russ maybe rights the ship and gets off this 2 game interception streak.
Okay. I like it.
You got a bold
Um,
prediction? Oh, and I guess I
yeah.
could give you a score prediction real quick. I think the Steelers actually do have find their way offensively, maybe because of how bad the Cincinnati defense is. Maybe not as good as the Steelers' offense is. I think they win 38-28.
Okay. I love the optimism. I don't know if I share it.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to get my brain to think that because I'm not real optimistic right now either.
For sure. I'm totally with you. I'll go with my bold prediction here is I think George Pickens breaks 1,000 yards for the season in this game. So that
How
would
much does he need?
require 100 yards. I think he's
Okay.
sitting at 900. So I think we see a 100-yard game from George Pickens here. I think there's a good chance that could happen against a weak secondary like this in the Bengals. I don't know what he did in our last game against the Bengals. Let me see if I can pull that up. Give me just a second here
I
to
got it
see.
right here. He went 3 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown on
Okay,
six
so
targets.
get him the ball a little bit more, and I think that's something that could definitely happen. Um, we need
Wow,
to have a
he
big game.
he is at 900 even. That's crazy.
Yeah,
He's had
we need it.
3 catches, 3 catches, 4 catches the last 3 games. We need to get him the ball more like we did against Baltimore the first time, 8 catches for 89 yards. We need to get him the ball a lot more.
Yeah, dude should be getting 7 or 8 targets a game minimum, like we've said.
Well, he's getting the targets, he's just not getting the catches, so that's where I hope Russ can actually make some noise and get him the ball.
That's true. All right. Well, game on Saturday
Yep.
in the new year. We will be there to break down that game the week after
Yep.
because we know we have one more week with that playoff matchup, and we'll have a little bit more clarity on who we're playing and our seeding and what that's going to look like. It's crazy, man. There's a chance that we get 3, 5, or 6 is where
Yep.
we sit right now, right? So again, just to run through that, the 3 seed is ours if we lock up the division, which means Baltimore loses and we win. we would have the same record, and I think we would win on strength of victory or
Yep,
similar opponents.
something
So
like that.
that's how we get the 3 seed. The 5 seed is if we win, no matter what, we get the 5 seed, or if we lose and the Chargers lose. That's how we get the 5 seed. The 6 seed is everything else. We lose or the Chargers win and we lose and whatever.
Yep.
So that's how that
I
works
think it
for
is
us.
worth mentioning. You started it off with this. We are very good with a lot of rest, and actually, Mike Tomlin is 11-0 when his teams have more than 10 days off and a loss, not include after a loss, not including a bye week. So this is Mike Tomlin's time to shine. Let's get this team ready to roll, and hopefully, we come out ready to play on Saturday night.
And generally good as an underdog, right? Like
Right.
Tomlin is
Yeah, true.
generally good when we're not favored. So again, there's arrows pointing in both directions for each of these teams, for the Steelers and for the Bengals. So let's hope that ours outweigh theirs a little bit and we can get the job done, go into the postseason hot. And boy, it would be awesome to have a home field playoff game. And
Yeah.
I think that would be, we would then draw the Chargers. That's what that would look like, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I'd take that. I would take that any day.
Me
But
too.
we'll see. All right, man. Well, as always, we thank you everyone for listening, for watching. We appreciate it. And Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks. Peace.